Hello everyone, welcome to UMC Students Podcast. In this series of 6 episodes, we will analyze life and ideas of one of the greatest writers and thinkers to have ever lived, Leo Tolstoy. In the previous episode, our classmates discussed about Tolstoy's childhood, which is episode number 2. I, Orhan Duman, will be your host. This episode is titled The Hedonist Warrior, and I have with me Ekin, Huynwoo, Peterson, and Felicia. So Huynwoo, let's begin with Tolstoy's own words.
He said, "I killed people in war and challenged men to duels in order to kill them. I lost at cards, consumed the labor of the peasants, and then had them executed. I was a fornicator and a cheat. Lying, drunkenness, promiscuity, murder. There was no crime I did not commit, so I lived for 10 years. This quote by Tolstoy describes his behavior when he was a young man. He was rather immoral and he was aiming for instant pleasure by exploiting his slaves.
Thank you, Huynwoo. Let's start our discussion with Peterson talking about Tolstoy's college years.
Leo Tolstoy is a man who has a great confidence in his young days. As an aristocrat, he was tutored at home until he was 16 years old. At that point, he entered the university. However, the future literary genius did not exactly excel at his academics. He got low grades and made little progress and quickly transferred into the university's law program. A few years later, Tolstoy left school altogether. Without ever having earned a degree of any kind, he was basically a college dropout.
Well, as you guys know, the reason for his academic failure isn't a mystery. Jan Tolstoy enjoyed partying a little too much. In fact, when Tolstoy was about to give up on his educational career, he was lying on a bed in the hospital being treated for a venereal disease. And it was noted that Tolstoy spent most of his time at the university drinking, gambling, and consorting with women.
Leo Tolstoy had a diary about his affairs with other women, including his peasants, and his opinions about them. This is where people consider him immoral. What do you guys think about his actions this time?
Yes, I think he was rather immoral because the fact that he committed the crimes never changes.
I think just at this time, Tolstoy was at a young age like many teenagers, but because he was very different from all the teenagers, he was an aristocrat. He got like lots of time, money, and got like peasants who would work for him. So he didn't really need to care about his future life. So I think he just did like many immoral things that he regretted later.
Yeah, like in fact, he already had all these women, already had these peasants in his life before, and also researchers speculate that Tolstoy may have like suffered from sex addiction because he already had these at a young age. Also, in his diaries, he writes at one point that he had to sleep with women. Otherwise, lust doesn't give me a single spare minute. And he was treated for sexual diseases at least twice, although he hated himself for his libidinous ways. He only managed to stop this behavior after marrying his wife, Sophia. So yeah, after that, he got her pregnant like 13 times, his wife, and this was like more of a redirection than a true change.
And also, like as we talked in class, like Tolstoy also made like hundreds of women like pregnant while he was like sleeping with his peasants and other strangers that he met.
Yeah, actually, after falling out of school and serving in the military during the Crimean War, author Henry Choyot noted that Tolstoy went through a period of serious alcohol abuse. His drinking was so bad that many of his acquaintances were shocked, and these were Russians, so it had to be pretty bad. In his later years, Every Party magazine reports that Tolstoy wrote about alcohol's insidious appeal in an essay called "Why Do Men Stupefy Themselves?", in which he concluded, and unsurprisingly, that Self-loathing is a big reason people became alcoholic.
Do you guys think it is necessary to take 10 years to change his habit?
I think although he took 10 years for changing his bad habits, it is better than no changes at all. Right now, rather many people do not change their bad habits even until they die, and I think that's why we should see him in positive way, that he at least changed his behavior and regretted what he did when he was a young man.
Because at this 10 years, he changed from one extreme where people are just being playboy, and then to another extreme where he was very settled and very a serious man who like did his like literature and think about his telos of life. So do the guys think it is actually necessary for it to take 10 years?
I think change like depends on each person. And for Tolstoy, I think 10 years isn't a big time for him because we know Tolstoy is a deep thinker and he thinks about a lot of things. And to change something about yourself, you need to really think about that. So
Yeah, you need to know what you're changing.
yeah, so I think 10 years wasn't like too long for Tolstoy.
And also like everyone's like experiencing different kinds of lifestyle.
Yeah.
And because he was like so rich and like have like lots of achievements,
He didn't have to worry about like what he had to do, or like he can literally just live his life. So 10 years is not a big time for him.
Yeah, he didn't have to like worry about money. He already had the money, house, families.
Okay, at the age of 24, Leo Tolstoy was pretty much a failure in life. He spent his college year gambling, drinking, and contracting with women. He returned home without any degree to show for his efforts and turned his efforts towards improving the lives of the peasants who live on and around his family estate, only to earn their scorn. There really wasn't much else for the young aristocrat to do but join the army, which he did in 1852 along with his brother Nikolai.
Tolstoy's war experience in the Crimean War was the seed that eventually transformed him into one of the greatest writers in history. Although Tolstoy was regarded as an officer, he was an aristocrat, so he had plenty of spare time to write. And his reports, stories, and letters describing the battles and daily lives of the soldier were remarkable. In that era, the idea of embedded journalists was unheard of, and accurate reports of the fighting and conditions were rare, making Tolstoy's report invaluable.
After the war, Tolstoy traveled to Europe in 1857, where he was exposed to Western literature, philosophy, and educational theories. This trip significantly influenced his intellectual development and his views on society and education.
Upon returning to Russia in 1859, Tolstoy dedicated himself to educational reform. He opened a school for peasant children at Yasnaya Polyana, employing progressive teaching methods and focusing on the moral and intellectual development of his students. This period marked the beginning of Tolstoy's lifelong interest in educational and social reform.
And here, it is a weird part of his life because, as what we read in Confession, he really disliked like education system. He thinks people should like be self-educated because like all the knowledge are in ourselves, and we should like self like find those knowledge. But then at this time of life, he opened a school for his peasants. Like, what do you guys think about his action?
Tolstoy's life is full of contradictions. His life philosophy was too idealistic, which you can't really practice in real life. He himself attended university, as we mentioned before, and threw out the idea of organized education is bad for people. Like, why? He had a great failure in his university, so I don't think he has enough knowledge of organized education. Therefore, he couldn't argue that education is bad or is not helpful for people.
Yeah, it was like interesting topic we discussed in class. Where also Mr. Sunny agreed him, and yeah, like we were talking about his dislike of like the actual education system. And yeah, as you said, like his peasants, like he had a whole different school for his peasants. But I guess his experience informed his later work at the school that he was doing. And like obviously his greatest work, War and Peace, it also gave him his first publishing success where he started to earn money. Yeah, his first published story, The Ray, a volunteer story, appeared in censored form in a leading literary journal to great acclaim. Tolstoy was also known as the lion of our literature, and he had a pretty interesting life when it comes to his writings. So maybe if there's anybody like want to talk about his poetic life.
So between 1849 and 1859, Tolstoy really found his rhythm. He started with childhood in 1852, which was like his big entrance into the literary world. It was fresh, it was real, and it showed what it's like to be a kid in a way nobody had seen before. Then came boyhood and youth, which kept the story going and showed how Tolstoy was growing as a writer and a thinker. He wasn't just telling stories, he was asking big questions about life.
But it was during the Crimean War that things really changed for him. The Sevastopol sketches came out of that time, and that they were a big deal. They show how tough war is, but it's how human and the soldiers were. Like Tolstoy killed a lot of like human like people in wars, and then he was like being a very great warrior. So it really changed like his mindset into like a very serious person.
And Tolstoy's own journey during this time was important too. His travels, his thinking about society, all of that helped shape his later books like War and Peace and Anna Karenina. So those years from 1849 to 1859, they were like Tolstoy's growing up years, getting him ready to become the famous writer we know today.
Like so we discussed like about a lot of the actions at this time. Like I think all these actions can be seen like as a reflection of his life. Like he went from one extreme to another extreme, and from like childhood to like youth, and then going from youth, and then he really like changed it at this time, and then many of like his thoughts change come back when to his childhood thoughts.
Yeah, his whole like ideas changed throughout his life. He changed many times.
So this time was like a very important time where Tolstoy really changed his lifestyle.
Yeah, I guess like that's why he also earned so much money from the things he wrote and published.
So although his this part of time of him is kind of immoral, we would say, but it is the basic of his writings, like War and Peace, like the books we mentioned before.
In the next episode, our classmates will discuss his early family life. Thank you, everyone.